session. There's a famous question: why is it that we have a celebration of Shavuos? Right? It would make sense, and then following this, we have a celebration of Simchas Torah. Right? Which one is it? Is it Shavuos when we receive the Torah, or is it Simchas Torah when we actually
end it? Yeah.
Right. So that's a famous question. So the famous answer, which I'm sure there are many answers, but a famous answer which is brought is that in truth the celebration is on Shavuos when we receive the Torah. However, we wait and see what we actually do with it. Do we actually learn it? Do we use it? Do we use it to its fullest to take advantage of it, or do we just leave it and get it, celebrate, and then leave it? Like someone who gets a nice present for his birthday, you can either unwrap it and use it, or you can leave it in its wrapping paper and just forget about it. Right? So we want to see, what do we do with this matana? What do we do with this gift of the Torah which we receive on Shavuos? Therefore, we have a little few months period where we receive the Torah, we celebrate it, and then we wait a few months to see what we do with it. And is there real reason for celebration? And is there simchas Torah? Do we have the simcha? Do we have the enjoyment? Do we have the happiness that we have fulfilled that which we have received? Okay, so really, in truth, from this period on until Simchas Torah, this is a very crucial time to involve ourselves with the actual learning of Torah, to show that we actually want it. We want it not just as a present, we want it as to acquire it, we want to keep it. So there's no better Mishnah to look at than the Mishnah of us, Perek Vav, Mishnah Hey, which starts like this: Gedola Torah yoyser min hakahuna. The Torah is better than the kahuna, or min malchus, and better than kingship. Shahal malchus niknes b'shloshim mailes. The malchus, the kingship, is acquired by 30 different ways, steps. The kahuna be'esim abra, with 24. The Torah, but the Torah is not 30, not 24. Niknes be'arba shmoina devarim. We acquire it with 48 different ways, and the Mishnah goes on to list many different types of acquirements of the Torah. For example, I'll just give a few examples. It starts with a very cognitive way. Talmud, you have to learn. It talks about the method of learning, the question-answer format which we learn. We have the social aspect, which involves, for example, one has to engage himself with speech, with social interaction with his friends and peers. One has to be mishamash Talmidei Chachamim. One has to serve or Talmidei Chachamim, understand how their lives are run. You have the behavioral ones, which involved a moderation in pleasure, not to have too much pleasure, not to engage in the gashmis of the world too much. We have emotions about love. Ava is one on the list, and we're finally have another category of character, humility, and simcha, happiness. These are, and throughout this 48 different categories which we need to use to acquire the Torah. Okay, and tonight I would like to go through a little introduction to this and then speak out only two of these 48. So just to start off, a little moshel. Okay, we have a woman back in the day in the 1800s who's unfortunately lost her husband to war. And she's selling apples in the market. She's got a big tray of apples, and she's gone to the local market, to sell the apples. And suddenly, some vicious, mean, cruel thug walks past and knocks over all the apples. And she starts crying. She's lost her apples, they're all rolling in the dirt and the mud. And how's she going to go home and feed her children that day? And a wise man comes up to her and says, "Listen, young lady, it's sad. You have definitely lost some money today, you've lost some of your apples, but whilst you can, grab what you can. Don't just leave them. Go and grab all the possible apples that you can get your hands on." So too over here, I feel that these 48 different methods in which to be kohen, to acquire the Torah, is like that. Back in the day, I believe in the Mishnayos days, this was a 48-step program. It wasn't just, it wasn't smorgasbords, which you just pick what you want and use to acquire the Torah. But in truth, you had to go step by step. You had to start off with the first one, fulfill that, perfect that, and then move on to the next step. However, nowadays, unfortunately, we're not on such a high level. We're not on such a focused level. And therefore, it's important that we don't just say, I'm going to get stuck on the first one, work only on the first one. But no, we should grab these apples. We should grab every single possible one which we can get our hands on to enable to help us be koina to acquire the Torah. We find that if one who learns in yeshiva, or one who learns Gemara or halacha, one will notice that a large section of Talmud is focused on kinyonim. Kinyonim means acquiring. For example, I go to a shop, I pick up an apple, I don't want apples, we go pick up something from the shop, and I go and pay. And I smash it on the way to pay. So who is that piece of food? Is it mine? Have I bought it yet just by merely picking it up? Or is it actually paying the cash which makes it mine? And if it was a mistake, I don't have to pay for it. It wasn't mine, it was a mistake. Or no, or is it mine that I've damaged my own product and it's my own, and therefore I still have to pay? Okay, so, and we find many, many examples, many discussions in the Talmud and Halacha. What is the point? When do we actually acquire something? So just one more little example. Imagine we've got two different people. We've got someone who's the moicha, someone who's buying something, and someone who's the koina, someone who's selling something, and someone who's buying something. Okay. Now, what stage does it leave the first person's domain? At what stage do we say, well, actually, it's left his house, it's left his possession, and it's gone out? Secondly, at what stage do we say it's come in to the second person? Do we say that it's now fully his? And what would happen if it's left the first person's rishos and hasn't yet entered the second, right? So we have many, many discussions about what's our point of acquiring. And if you don't have that point, you don't have that hagbar, for example, picking up an object, or that transfer of money, which buys an object, the object will not be sold, will not be given as a present. When the Mishnah says, with 48 ways a person can acquire the Torah, it doesn't use a language of these are 48 recommendations to acquire the Torah. It says, let me read it again aside. There are 48 ways to acquire, to grasp, to get hands on, to make ownership on the Torah, and these are the 48 ways. Just like everywhere else in Talmud and in Judaism, we have something which acquires something, whether it be a monetary value, whether it be marriage. At what stage does someone actually marry? Right? At what stage is that? So too, when it comes to getting the Torah, for us to make the Torah ours, to make it into our possession, there are 48 ways. So these are not merely just examples of just nice, as we say in Hebrew, eitzot, which are just advice to accept the Torah, but these are actually ways which we have to use. We have to focus on these 48 ways after Shavuos to use ourselves properly to acquire the Torah. So I'm going to start off today speaking about two. We're only going to speak about two. One being the Talmud, which is number one, which means learning, and one which is anova, which is humble, being a humility, being someone who's humble. Okay, and I'll explain why I've chosen these two specific ones. However, there are many more, which are very important and are needed for us to accept the Torah on Shavuos. So let's start with Talmud. Okay, Talmud means to study. So it's a nice piece of advice. If you want to learn Torah, to accept Torah, you have to learn it. And now that's pretty obvious. What does the word Talmud mean? And I'd like to bring it out with a question that I heard from a big Talmud Chacham in Yerushalayim. He asked a question like this. He said, if we take a look, let's take possibly the greatest man of our generation in Torah. Let's take someone like Matan Torah, someone who arguably knows most of the Torah, the most Torah in the world. He's someone who's the oldest in Torah, but also he's got phenomenal memory, and you can't catch him out on anything, right? So he asked the question. He said, this person was talking. He said, let's say that Chaim Kanievsky he's got 5 times the amount of brain power that I have. That's what this person says. 5 times? Okay, 5 times. This person's a very clever person. He said, let's say I learn 10 hours a day of Torah, which was probably true. And he says that Chaim Kanievsky is known for learning 20 hours a day of Torah. Okay, so we have 5 times brain power, double time, double effort. How much more Torah should he know than this person? So this person said he should only know 5 times 2, right? Double time, 5 times brain, double 2 is 10 times. He should know 10 more times Torah than the person who was asking this question. He said it's not the case. How come he knows 50 million more times Torah than I do? That's a very good question. So to answer this, I'd like to bring a Meiri in Mishlei. Meiri says, he brings out a very profound calculation. He proves it from Psukim. I don't have it in front of me now. He says, if I learn 1 hour of Torah, okay, straight, without being disturbed, how much have I learned? 1 hour. If I learn 2 hours of Torah, how much have I learned? 2 hours of Torah. Yeah. Logical. 3 hours, right? He says it's not the way it goes. And he brings proofs for it, and he says it's not the way it goes. In truth, when I learn 1 hour of Torah, or it suffers, when I learn 1 hour of Torah without any interruption, it's like 2 hours. When I learn 2 hours of Torah without any interruption, it's like 4 hours. And when I learn 3, it's like 8 hours. And when I learn 4, it's like 16 hours, so on and so forth. Do the calculations, 10 hours straight is over 1,000 hours, 1,056, if I'm not mistaken. 1,026, sorry, 1,026, right? That's what he says. It doesn't just go up hour by hour, but it doubles every time. Every hour which we have in complete Ritzufot, in complete uninterrupted Torah study, you get, it doubles, right? And therefore, someone, the great Tzaddikim and the great Talmidei Chachamim, who learn not just half an hour here, half an hour there, but they learn straight, consecutively, straight through the whole day, they obviously have many, many, many more hours and understanding of Torah than ourselves. And I talk for myself. Now, there's a very famous mashal, a very famous parable for this, which it's very, very powerful. Imagine you get a person who moves into a new house, and he's set up his house, and now he wants to boil himself a coffee. So he takes the kettle out the packaging, and he plugs it in, boils it 2.5 minutes. It's not going. The water's not hot. He turns it off. He changes the plug. Maybe this plug's not working. He goes to a different socket, plugs in his kettle. 2.5 minutes, doesn't work. So he figures it must be something wrong with the kettle. So he takes that kettle, puts it in the bin, goes to the shop, goes to BCC, buys a new kettle, but fills up the water, plugs it into the wall. 2.5 minutes later, the water's not hot. So he pulls it and says, there must be something wrong with the electricity in the house. Okay. A few months later, he moves out of the house and moves into a new house, a shared accommodation, and he sees his friend just he takes his kettle, puts it in the socket, 2.5 minutes, doesn't work. And then suddenly he sees his friend who takes the kettle, puts it into the plug, 5 minutes later, the kettle's boiled. Right? The mashal is that 2.5 minutes and 2.5 minutes and 2.5 minutes does not equal 7.5 minutes. When you're trying to boil a kettle, we have to give it time for it to actually boil. If we keep after every 2.5 minutes stopping it, it'll never reach the boiling point. Then we take out the wall, put it into another socket, it's not going to help. We've gone back to square one. Says the Chazon Ish in his famous book, Igeres Chazon Ish, Letters of the Chazon Ish. He explains that it's the same thing with Torah study. Torah study doesn't work where we can, learn for 5 minutes, look at our emails, check our text messages, get a coffee, carry on another 5 minutes. That's not how we're going to grow in Torah. Talmud is not where we do little bits of Torah. Talmud is real study. It's hasmada. It's something which we do for a long period of time. We try very hard. We don't just start and stop. We go for good. Everyone on their own level, obviously, goes for a nice period of time so that they can slowly break their boundaries and get further and further and further in Torah. There's actually related to this time of year in the Omer, we have the famous story of Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva, the Gemara says, his wife, very with Nesiyat Nefesh, told him, Akiva, my husband, go out and learn Torah. I'll maintain the house. You go and learn, go and get students, go and make yourself, go and fulfill your potential. So off Rabbi Kiva goes for 12 years, and he goes and studies, and he's coming back with 12,000 students. As he's coming back into town, he hears his wife having a discussion with a neighbor. And the neighbor's sort of making fun and ridiculing Rabbi Kiva's wife, and saying, Rochel, her name was Rochel, ridiculing Rochel, why do you let your husband just go out and leave you for 12 years? And she said, what do you mean? My husband is building the world of Torah, the whole Torah of Baal Peh, of oral law we have nowadays, most of it comes via Rabbi Kiva, and he was building that foundation. And of course, if it was up to me, he'll stay another 12 years. So Rabbi Kiva turns around, goes back to his yeshiva, which he had set up, and carries on for another 12 years and comes back with 24,000 students. And there's a famous question asked by the old Rosh Hashiva of Mir, Rabbi Shmulevitz, and he says, a very obvious question. Why didn't he just pop into the house, get a coffee, say hello to his wife, and then turn around and go back? Why did he immediately spin on his heel and walk all the way back? He should have just, popped in for a day or two, said hello, sorted out the family a bit, and then gone back. Okay? So Rabbi Shmulevitz answers with this sort of answer. He says, because 12 years and 12 years is not 24 years. 24 years of uninterrupted Torah study was necessary, was needed for the oral tradition to carry on. Had Rabbi Akiva stopped in for a few days, sorted out his affairs, and taken the time off from his Torah study, we wouldn't have the quality and the quantity of the oral law in which we have today, which came via Rabbi Akiva. Even after 24,000 students died, it was his 5 final and, I guess, best students that fulfilled the mission of continuing oral law. So this same idea, again, Talmud. Talmud is uninterrupted Torah study. There's on the same theme, there's a very nice, a beautiful Chavetz Chaim. The Chavetz Chaim asks a question. There's a famous pasuk, Veikar hi mipninim, that Torah, it's referring to Torah, is more precious, is more valuable than pearls, than precious stones. And the Chavetz Chaim asks the question. He says, we often find Torah compared to silver, to gold. As we know, Torah is more valuable, it's better than all the gold and silver in the world. Okay, Pasuk Mishlei. So why is it, Pasuk Tehillim. So why is it in this pasuk Veikar hi mipninim suddenly swaps Veikar, the value of something swaps from being gold into stones, into pearls? And he gives me this fantastic answer, and really it connects to this theme beautifully. He says that if you take one bar of gold, okay, let's say a bar of gold worth 1,000 euro, 1,050 euro, whatever it is the value of today, and you take one bar of gold and get another bar of gold. What's the value? 2,000 euro. It hasn't gone up in value. It's just more quantity. Well, everyone knows if you get a diamond, quarter of a carat, the difference between the value of a quarter of a carat to a half a carat is immense, and from half a carat to a carat, it's even more. It goes up. It doesn't just go up in double. It doesn't just. It goes up like this, like a peak. A peak goes straight up because the bigger the stone is, the more valuable it becomes. Says the Chavetz Chaim. It's the same thing with Torah. We can sit here and we learn 5 minutes. That's not so much value. But the more, if you learn 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, each time the value goes up much more. It's like diamonds. It's like pearls. It's a very beautiful pshat. Now, just to finish off this part of Talmud, we have a bracha we say every single morning. Everyone says it. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We thank Hashem for giving us the mitzvah of la'asok b'divrei Torah, to be osik, to be busy with Torah, osik with Torah. And I once had a question asked, why is the bracha not to learn Torah? Why is it la'asok b'divrei Torah, to be busy with Torah? Osik is usually a word used for business. We make Torah our business. Why should we be our business? It should be just as a mitzvah to shake lulav, al natilas lulav, to take lulav, or mitzvah al, we just had recently al achilas matzah, on the eating of matzah. So it should be al Talmud Torah, on the mitzvah of learning Torah. Why is it that we don't say al Talmud Torah? We say la'asok b'divrei Torah, to be osik, to be busy with the words of Torah. So I've heard in the past, and I think it's an obvious answer, that Torah, the way it works is, business, the way it works is that when someone's in the middle of let's say he works in property and he's about to do a good deal, when he's eating his breakfast in the morning, that's what he's thinking about. He's chewing his mind. He's thinking through any possible legal flaws, any possible flaws in the deal. Right? He's busy with it all the time. He goes on his walk during the day. His mind flutters off back into his business. It's a nature of people. Our wish and our prayer is that as soon as we zone out anything, automatically our mind goes back to our primary focus, which is Talmud, which is Talmud Torah, which is learning and the study of Torah. Okay, that's one idea of Talmud. Okay, now just to say two more shorter and small ideas. The Medrash Shmuel, which is a famous commentator on the mission of us, says that Talmud Torah means the ability to learn from others. Okay, the ability to learn from others. However great you are, however great one becomes, he can still learn Torah from someone else. So much so that we know the mission of us says that if someone learns even a statement of Torah from someone else, he has to respect him, because we want to be able to learn from all different people. I want to say a little bit of depth, I believe, is pshat in this Medrash Shmuel. I may be wrong, it's my own idea, but I think this is possibly the truth. Famously, we're coming to Shavuos, and famously 3 million Jews stood around Har Sinai and saw the Torah being brought down. Hashem said the first 2 of the 10 commandments, and the whole Jewish people stood there, all 3 million of us, and watched this occurrence happen. Okay. Now, as we know, the Jewish people are made up of 600,000 neshamot, 600,000 souls. Okay, so out of those 3 million people, already they were split into 600,000 souls. And the Zohar in Kabbalah, it said that at the time of Matan Torah, Hashem stood up and said, Anochi Hashem, I am Hashem, and all the Jews dropped dead. They all just died. Okay, and Hashem revived them. And then he said the next commandment, and they all dropped it again, and Hashem revived them. And then Hashem was about to say the next commandment, and everyone was like, whoa, stop, enough. We believe you, we trust you. Let Moshe say it for you. So we shall live. They were scared they would die and not come back. And it said in the Zohar at that moment, when the Jews died, they all woke up having heard all of the oral law. This is the Zohar, it's Kabbalah. They all woke up knowing all of the oral law, except there were 600,000 slight variations of oral law. And that's how we have a rule in Judaism, that if someone learns Torah sincerely and learns with truth and in integrity, people can reach different conclusions. And they're both true. How? Because there were 600,000 variations of the Torah given at Har Sinai. The reason we can't just choose ourselves which 600,000 are, we actually have to learn from one Rebbe, from one teacher, is because if we mix between two, we'll end up getting a 601st variation which doesn't actually exist. I would like to suggest that this idea of Talmud, learning from others, could possibly be that in order for us to be able to get the full capacity of Torah, we have to learn from everyone else, because our own Torah is limited. It's only one of the 600,000. Only by being willing to learn from other people can we expect to reach the full completion of Torah. Okay, so that's just one suggestion. And one more short idea on Talmud. This first law of the 48 ways of acquiring the Torah is like this. It's one of my favorite shots on this. So I'm just going to say it, get off my chest. There's a beautiful medrash in the Yikra. The medrash says that it gives a mashal, it gives a story about a king who calls in 2 of his people, 2 of his servants, or 2 of his workers, and says to them, listen, I would like to build a nice new country home in the country, a new palace in the country. Please, can you go to this location and dig for me a mile-long piece of land, dig it up so we can start making foundations. And he gives the one a spade, gives the other one a spade, and off they both go to this piece of land to find where they were supposed to dig up for the king. And when they get there, they take one look at this piece of land and they go, this ain't happening. It's not possible. There's just 2 of us. It's not possible for us to dig with our spade and get a mile-long stretch of land ready for foundations. Impossible. So the first one, he throws down his spade and walks off. And the Medrash calls him the fool. Okay. The second one looks at a piece of land and he says, it's difficult, it's very hard. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to dig 1 today, I'm going to dig 1 tomorrow, I'm going to dig 2 the next day, 3 the next day, and slowly and surely I will uncover this piece of land so I'll be ready for the new palace. And lo and behold, a year later, after every day going and digging a few digs, the land was ready. And the Medrash calls him, this is the wise one. Says the Medrash, it's the same with Torah study. If we take a look at our shelves in our houses, or in our shuls, and we see we have Chumash, we have Mishnayos, we have Gemara, Bavli, Yerushalmi, Sifra, Sifri, Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah, and everything in between, all the Rishonim, all the Achronim, Zoya, Kabbalah. We have all the Sforim about Machshava, all about Hashkafa, all the Maharals, and we say, impossible. This is not for me. And we're going to throw down the spade and say, let's forget this. Says Talmud. Talmud says study. Study means just get on with it. Stop making all these different calculations, how you can finish it, how you can't finish it. Do a bit today, do a bit tomorrow, do a bit the next day. Keep it consistent. If you consistently continue learning Torah, you will one day become the Talmud Chacham you want to become. And that's actually the word, we use a word for someone who is very into his Torah study. We call someone who's got hasmada, a masmid. Someone who continuously learns Torah. And there's a famous misconception that a masmid is someone that you'll find him at 3 o'clock in the morning hunched over a Gemara learning. That's not what masmid means. The word masmid comes from Tomid. But the unique thing about the Korban Tomid, the sacrifice of Tomid every day, was that it happened every single day of the year. It's the only Korban which every single day in, day out, was exactly the same. You had one in the morning, just one, and one in the afternoon, just one. But it was that continuous act of every single day bringing those 2 small Korbanos, which is a Tomid, which is a masmid, someone who continuously learns. And that, just to wrap up, that's what I would like to suggest is Pshat in Talmud. So we said 3 Pshat in Talmud. I'm just going to recap a little summary. Firstly, we said the idea of learning B'rut Sufas without interruptions for periods of time. Again, as I said before, everyone on their own level. Not everyone shouldn't be now sitting down. I'm going to now learn 12 hours and they'll just crash. We have to know ourselves and we have to know where we stand in this world. But we should each, in our own place, try this Shavuos, from this Shavuos, when we want to get to Simchas Torah, we should try and make those learning systems which we do have more B'rut Sufas, more continuous, uninterrupted. That was the first idea of Talmud. The second idea of Talmud was from the Medrash Shmuel, and that was that we have to learn from others. We should learn from others. That we shouldn't always say we have to learn from someone greater than ourselves, but we can learn from people lower than ourselves. And just to recap, that was the idea of 600,000, that we want to get to everyone else's chiluk, everyone else's portion of Torah, and incorporate it into our own. The third and final pshat we said, explanation of what Talmud is the idea that although it doesn't have to be long stretches of time, it doesn't have to be uninterrupted, but it has to be that we are consistent. Every day, we have our set sessions and we keep to it, we stick to it. Just to actually add on one little thing, I saw in a book quoted in the name of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, one of the great leaders of Jewish people, died 20 years ago. He said there are 4 ways. He was talking to people who were in Torah study all day. But he said there are 4 ways to become a Talmud Chacham. He says you can either learn Gemara in depth, Gemara Be'iyun. You can learn Gemara B'kiyas, Gemara lightly but quickly, go through it quickly, again and again. You can learn Halacha Be'iyun in depth. You can learn Halacha in depth. Or you can learn Halacha B'kiyas, the same idea. You learn Halacha quickly and go over it again and again. He said any one of these people can become a Talmud Chacham. Mistake is when we're not consistent. One day I'm learning Halacha B'iyun. This time I've got a big energy. I want to start learning, take Masechet Shabbat. I want to learn it really in depth. The next day I decide naturally I'm going to learn Chumash Rashi. I'm going to learn Chumash. The next day I want to learn Maharal. The next day I want to do Halacha B'iyun. Right? If we're not consistent, we never get anywhere. It's like putting the kettle on, putting the kettle off, putting the kettle on, putting the kettle off. That's just one final thought. Now I'd like to move on. Are there any questions?
No, it's okay.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I'd like to move on to the next one I've chosen to discuss today, which is anova, humility. Meaning, what's humility? Humility, usually the best translation, the best explanation is not seeing your own qualities greater than anyone else's. So it's to recognize your qualities, but not to think you're better than anyone else. Recognize that everyone else has also got qualities. And everyone in this world has been chosen by Hashem to do their purpose and fulfill their tafkid. Why have I chosen this subject, Anova? Because there's a famous pasuk, Reishis Chochma Yiras Hashem, which means the beginning of wisdom, Torah study, is the Yira, is fear of Hashem. And if we take a look at the letter from the Nachmanides, from Ramban, it's a very famous letter. It's one he wrote to his son from when he got to Israel. And he speaks out. The whole letter is pretty much based on having humility. If you go through it in depth, you'll see it's all coming back to the first idea of having humility. And this is what he says. I'm going to read out a quote from the middle. And through having humility, you'll automatically get in your heart the midah of Yira. Okay? Yira meaning fear of Hashem. So if Rishis Chochma Yiras Hashem, if before Chochma we have to get Yiras Hashem, right? So humility has to come before Yiras Hashem. So I chose humility because then it's a perfect solution. We have humility, we try and work on this middle of humility. We hopefully through that get a higher level of Yiras Hashem, and that way we can get to Chochma. So hopefully this Shavuos I'm going to personally try and work on this trait. There's a famous Gemara in Tanis. The Gemara goes like this. Rabbi Chanina ben Idi, Omar Rabbi Chanina ben Idi says, Rabbi Chanina ben Idi, Loma nimshlu divrei Torah l'mayim. Why is Torah compared to water? Dechsiv, and he brings a possible where Torah is compared to water. Lo mechal to tell you, ma mayim manichim mokin gevoya v'hochin mokin nomoch. Just like water comes from a very high source and trickles and goes down, it flows downwards. After divrei Torah, so to divrei Torah, ein miskaimin elo b'misha datu shvala. Torah only goes into someone who has a non-haughty, he has a low, who has his mind on a low level, meaning that he's got humility. Now, Gemara carries on. Gemara says, but Omar Oishia says, Loma nimshul divrei Torah l'shloisha mashkim halalu. Why is Torah compared to these three different liquids? B'mayim with wine, b'mayim with water, or b'yayin and with wine, or b'cholov and with milk. So the question is why, and he brings psukim, it brings verses that show us how Torah is compared to these three liquids. Just to finish off the Gemara, then I'm going to explain. The Gemara brings a very strange story. Bounty the Kaiser, the daughter of this Kaiser, which means the local Roman leader, said to Rabbi Yisroel ben Chananya, said to Rabbi Yisroel ben Chananya, who, in brackets, was not exactly the most handsome guy out there. Okay, she says, why is it that Torah, which is such a special thing, why is it placed in such a lowly vessel? Meaning, if Torah is so special, why is it that you, you didn't exactly win a Mr. Universe, why is Torah by you? That's the question. So he says, Omalao, he said back to her, Avicha Romi Chamra, the money the pacher. He says, I'll say outside. He asked her, which vessels does your father keep his special wine in? So she answered, he keeps them in earthenware vessels, ceramic, of stone, cheap vessels. He then asked her, don't you think it would be better in gold and silver? Is it fitting for such beautiful, expensive, well worked on, old aged wine to be kept in such low vessels? We should be kept in gold and silver. And she says, you know something? You're right. So she went, she trotted off and told her helpers, we've got to pour all my father's wine out of ceramic vessels, out of earthenware vessels, into gold and silver. What happens the next day? This Kaiser wakes up, goes for a drink, and it's horrible. He spits it out, and he calls in his daughter and he says, what's happened? He said, what do you mean? Rabbi Yisroel ben Chananya told me that we should be kept in nice vessels. So he went down to, so the Gemara carries on, and he asked why is it, and he explained to the Caesar, explained to the Roman officer what happened. He said it's the same thing with Torah. If Torah would be kept in nice vessels, it wouldn't have the same quality. It's like wine. So we see this comparison of Torah to wine being kept in low vessels. The Gemara carries on. There's going to be one more line, and then we're going to hopefully explain all this. The Gemara carries on. Rabbi Elazar says, just like these three liquids, if they're left unattended in halakha, according to Jewish law, cannot be drunk, have to be thrown out. So too, the Torah, which is compared to these three different liquids, have to be kept attended. Okay. Now I'm going to ask a few questions, and hopefully, hopefully we can get to a clarity in what's going on over here. Firstly, why is it that Torah has to be kept in lowly vessels? Why does Torah have to be kept by someone who's got humility? Number one. Number two is, what is Peshat in? What's the reason they are compared to water, wine, and milk? Okay. Thirdly, and very importantly, what's this last part of the Gemara? We're talking about Torah being you got to be humble to get Torah, just like wine has to go into a humble vessel. Then he starts talking about leaving it unattended. What's the connection between the end of the Gemara to the beginning of the Gemara? Okay. Are the questions understood? Yeah. Is that understood?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, understood? Okay.
Sure.
Let's start off with the first question I'm going to try and answer is why is it that Torah is compared to water? Okay, so this first explanation is coming from Maharal. And Maharal in his Sefer Nesivos Olam brings this answer. He says that if one looks at Mayim, water has no boundaries. Wherever water goes, it flows. Nothing stops it flowing. It keeps flowing. Okay, and Torah has to be the same thing, meaning that if you have someone who is a Baal Gaiva, someone who is haughty, someone who has not got the midah, the characteristics of being humble, okay, he brings a limitation to the Torah. Why? Because it has to fit with him. He's haughty. He won't go down on his level. He thinks he's got no fault. He thinks everything he knows is correct and just. Therefore, the Torah has to fit to his perfect makeup. If it doesn't fit to how he believes and is his opinion, he'll mold and shape the Torah to himself. He's not flexible. Torah needs to go into a flexible body where the Torah itself shows its shape. It spreads out and shows where it's supposed to be going. That's what the Maharal says. The next two are my own suggestions. You're all welcome to share yours, but it's what I feel is possibly the explanation. Wine is like all other alcohol, where if we look at on a bottle of, let's say, whiskey or on good wines, it tells you what is kept in. For example, take whiskey, for example. We have a whiskey, it says it's been in a double oak barrel, right? It's been in an oak barrel twice. It's been in a sherry cask. It's been in an old wine barrel. They're very particular to round the bottle and to explain to us which barrel it came from. What's the reason for this? So for those who can taste the difference, the reason is because the barrel itself influences the whiskey. It's not that we don't want the whiskey just go into a barrel. We want the barrel to help form the taste and the smell and the look of the whiskey. So when we put it in a sherry cask barrel, we want that old wine to come out and make some sort of difference that makes the whiskey into a better whiskey. Okay? So too with Torah, if we're a Baal Gaiva, if we are haughty and do not have the midah of humility, then what happens is we're going to influence the Torah. We take Torah inside us, and we then go and influence it. We want to put all our own feelings and own thoughts into the Torah. We don't want that. We want it to go into a stone, ceramic barrel. We want it to go into a barrel which gives out no taste. It keeps the wine as pure as possible, keeps the Torah as pure as possible. It's very common. There's a famous Reb Dessler, which is a very nice Reb Dessler. He says that if you've got two people, one person is playing chess on Shabbos, okay, and a guy walks into the room and he thinks to himself, are you allowed to play chess on Shabbos? So what does he do? He goes to the shelf and starts looking at the books, trying to find, are you allowed to play chess on Shabbos? The other guy who's playing chess on Shabbos goes to the shelf and starts looking, are you allowed to play chess on Shabbos? The difference is that the guy that's playing chess is looking to find that chess is allowed to be played on Shabbos, and the guy who in his own brain thought chess might have been forbidden is looking to find the source that chess is forbidden on Shabbos. Now, in this example, it wouldn't really work, but it could be they'll come to a different conclusion. Not because they've searched the truth and got the genuine truth, but because they've let their own feelings and opinions influence their learning. Okay, so in order to learn Torah, we can't be haughty. We can't say that we're always right. We can't have a lot of ego, because if we do that, we're going to, whenever we want, we're going to try and fit the Torah into ourselves. We're going to try and make the Torah fit with our ideologies, with our opinions, etc., etc. That's wine. Okay, so we've done wine, we've done water and wine. Finally, cholav. Talk about milk. So milk is a bit different. Milk is not just that. If you take wine and put it in a bad barrel, the wine turns into vinegar. It turns bad, but it's still got a use. Okay. If you take milk and put it into a bad barrel, unless you leave it there long enough, that it becomes cheese, right? It becomes really bad and becomes soft cottage cheese. But generally, the milk itself, the Torah which you do have, not only do you limit it, not only do you influence it, but you actually ruin it. You make it go bad. Okay. I'll give you a little example of this. There's a famous, I once saw a famous quote by Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, I don't know science well. In the last 8 years of his life, he was busy trying to prove a theory in science which was unfounded, and all the leading scientists of this day were arguing against him. At the end of 8 years, I've forgotten which argument this was. At the end of 8 years, he said, "I've not just wasted the last 8 years of my life because I couldn't be wrong." Right? So even the science which he did have, he was one of the greatest scientists to ever live. Even that, he took it and he wasted 8 years. He ruined it for 8 years just because he had ego that he couldn't be wrong. He had to keep his original theory correct. Okay, just as an example, I'll bring it back to Torah. But we can do the same thing. We can have a piece of Torah which we are egoistic and we don't like, and we can make that Torah and ruin it. We can, as the Gemara says, that Torah can be used as a Sam HaChaim, it can be used as a medicine to heal us, but it can also be used as the opposite. It can also be used as a poison. Torah is most infinite, is most high being on this world as we know it. It's Hashem's word of mouth. It's from Hashem. We can take it and use it for the bad. And being haughty does that, influence the Torah in that way. I'd just like to end off. Sorry. And there's one more question we had. Rabbi Yisroel, what's he got to do with it? I want to connect the two parts of the shir together. We have Talmud. We said is someone that learns the whole time. We have Anova, which is humble. Rabbi Yisroel says that just like these three liquids, milk, wine, and water, if left unattended, according to Jewish law, has to be thrown out. So to Torah has to be left. It always has to be attended. It can never be left unattended. And I want to say like this: there's another Meiri Mishlei. The other Meiri Mishlei says that the nature of Torah is for it to be forgotten. Let's forget now why this is. He speaks out there why it is, but he says the nature of Torah is for Torah to be forgotten. Okay, so you can get someone who can remember every novel he's ever read, you remember every movie he's ever watched, you can remember every football score he's ever, but still the nature is that when it comes to Torah, he'll forget things, right? And the Meiri explains why this is. Only a haughty person, only someone who's egoistic, will ignore that piece of advice and will say, "No, I'm better than that. Don't worry. I'm going to always remember anything I know. It's in there, stuck in there. It's there forever." If one's haughty and ignores the fact that Torah is divine and the way of the Torah is that you forget it, he'll leave it unattended. Says Rabbi Yisroel, just like wine and water and milk show us the message that one has to be humble. It also shows the idea that one has to always leave it attended, not unattended. So to Torah is the same thing, that we have to be humble, and through not having humility, that causes us to leave it unattended, and therefore we'll forget the Torah. Only someone that recognizes that he can always need to learn more and more is someone that will remember and gain Torah. And we see that from our great leaders of every generation. That even though they've mastered the Torah, they know Torah Kula. Going back to possibly the biggest Talmud Chacham alive now, Chaim Kanievsky, he makes a siyum every single year in Erev Pesach on Kol HaTorah Kula, which means all of the Torah. He still spends 20-hour days learning. He recognizes that if he stops learning, he's going to forget it. The example of the mashal they gave is actually an escalator which is going down, okay? And we're running up the escalator, and it's going down. If we run fast enough, we get to the top. If we stop for 1 minute, even if we're just staying static and not going downwards, we'll go back down to the bottom. Torah is the same thing. We have to always try and hard as we can to get up that escalator and reach the top. And if we stop for a minute, even though we're not going down, we'll automatically find ourselves being lowered. And that's the nature of Torah. I'd like to end off with just two very small stories which bring out the last point of humility. We have a story that happened with the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer living in the late 1700s, early 1800s. Unfortunately, his first wife, Malka, died at a youngish age. She left no children, unfortunately, and she died. And about a year later, the Chasam Sofer gets in the post a letter. This letter is from Rabbi Akiva Eger, the other leading Torah scholar in the generation, saying that I actually have a daughter who was married to a man called Rabbi Leib, who was a Rav somewhere, and unfortunately he died very young. I would like to suggest that maybe my daughter will be fit for the Chasam Sofer. That's what he writes. Now the Chasam Sofer, not in his natural way, handed over this letter to his dayan in his basin with Daniel Prosovitz. He gave over the letter as he did to all other halachic letters, but this wasn't a halachic letter. So after Daniel went and he looked through the letters and he realized this is a this is something to be dealt with. So he started behind the scenes agreeing with the Rebbe Akiva Eiger that will be a good shidduch, a good match. Okay. A few months later, he walks into the office of the Chasam Sofer, and he says to the Chasam Sofer, this letter which you gave me a few months ago, I've been dealing with it, and I've got the perfect shidduch for Rebbe Akiva Eiger's daughter. And he says, oh, very good. Who is it? He says, what do you mean, who is it? It's you. You, the Chasam Sofer. You've unfortunately, your wife has died. Her husband has died. You're both fitting to marry each other. I want you to. It'll be a good shidduch. The Chasam Sofer turns around and laughs. He goes, don't be silly. It's not for me. Who am I? I'm so embarrassed. I'm all right. Rebbe Akiva Eiger. Rebbe Eiger is the greatest man in his generation. I'm all right. I know nothing. So Daniel Krosovitz turned around to him and laughed. He goes, don't worry. I've sorted that out as well. When I sent a letter to Rebbe Akiva Eiger, he said to me, don't be silly. My daughter can't marry the Chasam Sofer. I'm Oretz. I'm nothing compared to the Chasam Sofer. So he goes, in there, Geffen. What a perfect match. He's an Amoritz. You're an Amoritz. You can marry. You can get married. You see from this great match. Sorry.
Good match.
Good match. Exactly. You see from this story that the great men, although they knew their place, but they still had this natural midah characteristic of humility. End up with one more story. With the same person, Rebbe Akiva Eiger. Rebbe Akiva Eiger was once coming to a village together with the Nesivos. Nesivos being Yaakov Lisa, one of the greatest Acharonim, someone that in yeshivas they spend many hours with that poring over this Nesivos. Chavis Das. He's got many others from Torah. He's got many very special books. And they were sitting in a carriage together coming into a city. And as they're coming into the city, they both see throngs, huge crowds of people waiting to greet them. And Rebbe Akiva Eiger says to himself, they can't be coming for me. Who am I? Yes, I'm a Rav, but I'm nothing like Yaakov Lisa. He's the greatest man of his generation. So he hops out the carriage on the right side and starts holding the carriage to show respect for Yaakov Lisa. Now, Yaakov Lisa sitting in the carriage, thinking to himself, who am I? I'm sitting next to this great man, Rebbe Akiva Eiger. Who am I I'm sorry, it must be, these crowds are not for me. These crowds must be for Rebbe Akiva Eiger. So Yaakov Lisa, the Nesivos, jumps out the other side and starts holding on to the carriage to show respect for Rebbe Akiva Eiger. As the carriage gets into town, people look inside and there's no one there. There's no one in the carriage. Rebbe Akiva Eiger is on the right side pushing, Yaakov Lisa is on the left side pushing, both trying to show respect to each other. Again, you see from it's just a small, nice, cute story, but it's a story you see beautifully that the great people in Torah were not haughty. They were not people that felt that, well, I'm the biggest guy in my generation, I'm going to be haughty. On the contrary, the bigger they were in Torah, the lower they felt themselves. It does not mean they didn't know their place. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu says, Moshe Rabbeinu was Adam. He's someone that was completely humble, right? But it doesn't mean he did not know his place, because he still led a generation. He led 3 million people out of Mitzrayim. He got the Torah. He knew who he was, but he didn't allow the midah of Gaiva to influence him in any way. And therefore, he still recognized the importance and the good in everyone else. And with these 2 middas, out of the 48, which of course every single one is important, me personally, I'm going to hopefully this year try, and this is how we should accept the Torah, with this awareness that the Torah has been given to us today on Shavuos, but only to reach Simchas Torah, to reach that we've got Simcha, that we've learned Torah properly, enjoyed it. But how do we do this? We have the mission almost tells us there's 48 different ways. There's 48 different conditions, not ways, 48 different conditions. Out of these 2 conditions, I've only spoken out 2 today. There are many more and very beautiful and important ones. The first one being Talmud, the idea that we have to study, be it in the quantity of time, be it in the quality, be it in the consistency. We also have the midah of anova, of being humble. That without the midah of humbleness, we cannot possibly reach the Torah. Firstly, as we said, just like water, we limit the Torah. Just like wine, that we influence our Torah, but we put our own humane influences into the Torah. And thirdly and finally, we have the milk, which we actually, the Torah, which we do have, we completely ruin, and we destroy the Torah through us being Balei Gal, through us being haughty and not having this midah anova. I wish you all a very good Shavuos. Are there any questions? I'm wanting to stick around. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
No. Was very good, but you have to be, I don't know, what would I say? It was hard, but very good. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Shavuot Tov, and that you may have a good and wonderful Yom Tov. All the best. Take care.
Thank
Take
you.
care for the cheesecake.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, have a good Shavuos, everyone.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Skyos.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay.